Misbro David and the Night Royal Officer, Vinos Deshli Armin Sadi Al Mekshufla Sina Lady. Afshi Ashurba Vian Fani Baglet said the Clement Shabo. Gam Kalef Begate Salmavis Slogi Rarok Yatri Madi. Shift the Chow Mishakta Kohema Yagn Yakbuni. Arok Lafana Shulfa Negat Sarai, the Shad of Hashem and Roshi Kosti Rabaya. Achta Bechesa Yudapuni Kolya Mechayai, the Shapti Beves at the Naila Ora Yaman. It is it. Followed one from a cover.
Tom. It has the loss by now and the sarcophagi, the command of the sarcophagi. But the older I get, the more I'm bored how these people survived the war, rebuilt, had a life. Russa lost my mother. Here, though she was 101, was a Hungarian, and how they came in that, because it's to rebuild. This just without saying anything is incredible. First, it's fact, they survived and came, you managed the ashes, you know, take people busy. He was traumatized with this. Can't even imagine what trauma they went through. Trauma of all traumas. Came back and they came over here, we described pillars of the community. It's incredible, just awesome. But for that itself, this week's precious. My mother, she lived the whole life, 100 years. This is incredible. Not many people, and she was, but then the clear mind was here. It wasn't, has shown more. It was an incredible blessing. Some Sefer says, all the Torah when they say on the Hesped gives the Neshama wings to go up to Shemai and the fire to be. I'm going to say over the salt the Pusik is exposure. What he says, V'yiri v'sedekah Yisrael. It saw the Rebbeinu Shloinam. So therefore, how do you see Hashem? You just put in vor. The sort of Kisel Kubed. The Sanchanas Raglob underneath his legs. The Maasa Lidris Hasaper and the Eitzim Hashemayim L'Toyer. What does that mean? Nasha says Lidris Hasaper was a brick made of sapphire stone. The Gills of the Rebbeinu Shloim had a brick under his legs. There was a brick made of Lidris Hasaper. And a sapphire, it's a Ashelans. Up in the Shloim, Lidnas means it was white, it was a Nuban. Lidris Hasaper. And why is that? Why the Shem have the big to remind and Eloik Betsudim that I am with you in pain. You're not alone. When we are in pain, the Kaviyot of the bunch says, I am there with you. So the body Shlem always out this brick with cloth, so was shipping with sign laying bricks. There was a brick that reminded me of sons of Kadiso. One is the Eitzim Hashemayim the Torah. So Rashi says, now that you're redeemed, Bonisham says the heaven is clear. Eitzim Hashemayim. The heaven was in clear heaven, the sun is shining. Like, I don't understand. Rashi means, is it Livnus Hasaper or the gates of the Shai the Torah? Livnus Hasaper was the break. There was of the side, and the Rashi says, we looked and they saw gates of the Shai the Torah. The Lefteris over here was a lady that came from a beautiful home in Al-Dahain, came over here, went through the hell of hell with all the Holocaust survivors, without knowing the detail is that what they went through is just mind-boggling, and was able to be here. They carried the side of their heart, the trauma they carried, but still there was a break, and they looked at the positive. They asked people with always had a positive attitude. Always the Dashmaichel, the girls, and Esther went to visit her, asked them for Brucha, so she said to them, Brucha Zazan is still betofen, and Minna in Bezdofen. And with the happiness and the positiveness. That is incredible. People carry trauma. Well, she was Eiksama Shemayim, the Toya. She had a clearness in her. That was in the Zoyd, when it's translated, Nas, says the Zoyd a little differently. Not a break. It represents the moon. That means we have ups and downs of life. Just that's what life is. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's a struggle. So I made it that easy. Person has to let the sun shine into himself when he's down. We all go out down. This lady always shine no matter what. And a positive attitude. It's incredible what people say. Just like how to say the Buddha Yufis. Everyone that came with a smile and she had incredible little heads at the top of the Chufin came in. And I used to come to her. We was like, got all nervous, and I'm all nervous, and didn't like to come so often. So I'm going to be nervous. She got nervous. The rabbi is coming. One of the great nisyonis to have was Lechlecho. Leadership tells of him if he Lechlecho, Aitzachov, that's one of the great nisyonis. That was the man that should pick at the blaze and asks, why is that such a sign? Whether Shemigayim told them, I got the Shemat Habot Het, I'll give you brachas, you'll be wealthy, you'll be matzliah. But still, going, you don't know where you're going, isn't a sign. Imagine these Holocaust survivors left Europe. Where are we going? No one is telling us what's going to be. Not dying, was the word they used to say. And where are we going? And they went and they rebuilt, but we get that out of shape as we have to pay the mortgages to know how to pay. It came with nothing. Came with the ashes of Auschwitz to rebuild. The Baal Turim says, Lechlecho, the Samt the Bensham built Avrumi Lechlecho. What is Lechlecho? Avrumi was 75 years when Hashem said to him, Lechlecho. Lechlecho was exactly 100. It means if Lord should have said to Avrumi, you have another 100 years to live. He lived 175 years. The Avad Mifteris is Lechlecho, the 100 years. But there's another time in the Torah it says Lechlecho. It says, Badaikedu, Lechlecho, Eretz Hamariyu. And it was like, another Lechlecho. She has a steer to this Lechlecho, this 100-year-old lady, this Bedis, to take her to Etzisrael. It's incredible to be buried in Etzisrael. So the last Lechlecho, the 100 years that she lived. And the biggest schools that she has, she left behind children, grandchildren, behind the cliff. But we dated Hashem to go up to the Venezuela to say, I survived, and I made sure Yiddishkeit is still going. Let it be a Meditza Yosha for the children, the grandchildren, the Fushalek, for the grandchildren, their grandchildren. It blows in Esel Koppen.
Philip, Mr. Stanley White. And to all for attending as I attempt to pay tribute and get covered off on my mother. Reholarian Basra Private. Before I begin, I need to acknowledge to thank those who were involved with my mother on a daily basis. This was a team of caregivers, second to none.
individually. First off, yeah, they'd 25 years, Margaret like from that. You dated yourself more than, possible. You kept her looking beautiful. All this. You made her food. It means everything in the house was taken care of by you. She looked forward to your chant. We all this. Teresa, I think you've been with us about 6 years. You were the consummate profession. You taught us all and pay attention to everything there. That you were the one who got us to write down every single event that happened next year, and was done just wrong. Lara, always available, day or night, on a minute's notice, always. I think your Hungarian conversations, the music, the talking, the joking, the chit-chat, always brought a smile to her face. It was something you could do. Had a special way of doing that. So many times you told me, how many times to tell me that you love my mother like your own. So many times your love and care was so evident every single time that you did. Vienna, Malia, dear, always professional, always approaching my mother with such respect, always keeping her occupied, never ending, endless games of Brummikeld, keeping her busy, keeping her going. Always. I can't thank all of you enough. Additionally, I live in New York with my family, and was not able to be with her that often. I have an incredible debt. My mother's neighbors, Shoshana and Rami, Angie and Weiss. Between the two of you, my mother always had a Shabbos Kiddush. Everything done for her. Shoshana would stop by every Friday night to help usher in the Shabbos. Make sure everything was just right, in the right mood. Incredible. Weiss, I can't even count the number of years you've been blowing shofar for my mother. Stopping by not just Rosh Hashanah and holidays, but every Shabbos, even during the week, at a moment's notice, anytime. I also can't count how many shots of Sudovitz you had with her over the years. Angie, I cannot remember an occasion that would not have a beautiful bouquet of flowers from you. You never missed an occasion. There were flowers in the house always from all you guys. To Irving and Shirley, Irving never failed to be at my mother's side in times of crisis, providing me. You would get a phone call in the middle of the night, and I knew you'd be there a minute later. It was always. You never failed to provide me with both halal and common sense advice that I so desperately needed all the time, any time. We're going to have her mention the girl from when I was at Esther High School. I'm going to mention him also. These girls would come every Shabbos afternoon. Sometimes 3, sometimes 6, sometimes 10. They would always be there, chatting, telling stories, listening to stories, singing Shabbos songs, and more. Only recently did I find out they were quietly sang Tehillim on my mother's behalf on their own. They are such fine girls, hearts of gold. To our friend Marcia, week after week, every week. Every Wednesday was it, I think. It was always lunch with Marcia, always. My mother could count on her being there. It was a time that they could talk, to laugh, to recount different things. Your accompaniment, your presence at my mother's house is so appreciated. My mother always appreciated it so much. Mom, it is no coincidence that you were loved by all. Your dignity, respect, your gentle character, and dear due to Paul who met you. Almost 25 years ago, I stood before many of you. Give a hesped for my father. At that time, I told you what his last words to me were. They were words from Helen. Well, tonight I stand in a similar situation. Our Hashem and mother, until the end, was in fairly good condition. It's a bracha. And she would choose her words carefully, wisely. At one point, not long ago, during a time of stress for her, she was not having a good day. She held my hand, and she said to me, she's not afraid of dying, that she had a long and useful life. Useful. She didn't say she had a happy life. She said a wonderful life, not a satisfying life. She used the word useful. I thought this was an interesting word to use, so I looked it up in the dictionary at the time. I thought with her English not being her first language, maybe she misused the word. But no, I looked it up. The definition of useful, quote, of a valuable or productive kind. Used in a sentence as to do something useful with your life. And truly she had a useful life, useful to the family, useful to her friends, useful to the organization she served, the Beaker Hall at which she and my Aunt Ansi started, Tyrus Emes, Shelters of Israel, to Rav Isaacson and Rabbi Lowe, and then to Beis Yehuda and the Rabbanim there. What a brilliant summation of her life she gave with that one phrase. Those of you who know her know that she was a woman of grace and elegance, dignity and respect. Always a good word for everyone. Never once did I hear her raise her voice. Never once was there a word of lashon hara from her, ever. She was a woman of tzedakah as well. Every time I would come to LA for a visit, she sat me down and she choreographed a full list of checks to be given out to individuals, to Rabbanim, to organizations. Helping others was always on her mind, and tzedakah was foremost. So many memories. I remember once when we were in Israel, and my mother wanted to do something that would make a difference. We went to a school for needy children from broken homes with no love. My mother walked in. She met with the children. She sat with them. She played with them. She gave them motherly love. And of course, at the end, she gave the school a substantial gift. This was just who she was. She wanted to do it, and she did it. She felt she had to do something. All this from a girl born in a small town in Hungary, Szentendrei. We talked a lot about the old country, how things were then. She would recount to me how, as a young girl, she would work in the family textile business. She wasn't out playing somewhere, having a good time, like might be today, but she was working in the textile business, selling goods alongside with her sister, Ansi Mandel. Their good nature, their behavior, they were perfect salesgirls, and they enjoyed what they were doing. She went on, with Haber again said, she went on to survive unspeakable atrocities in Auschwitz, only to come out with her Yiddishkeit intact. She married my father and eventually came to Los Angeles to start a new life. That was 75 years ago. They were, those people who came over along with my parents, they were the Nasa and Nishman generation of the time. They got here and immediately started the task of building the Jewish community. They didn't wait for reasons, didn't wait to hear for any excuses as to what happened in Europe and what happened to them and their families. They were truly just Nasa first, through their unwavering emunah in Hashem, kosher homes, shuls, mikvahs, yeshivas. It began them all. It was their mission. And always she had time for the family, with my father often working late at night and not at home. It was my mother who would provide the guidance to put me in the right derech and make sure that I carried on the traditions with which she grew up. It was that important to her. Years ago, when my father was alive, my mother would make weekly trips to the beauty shop. My father would tell people as she was going to make herself more beautiful, "Mom, I'm here to tell you that you are beautiful always, inside and out, in every way." Our community has lost a huge piece of what I call LA royalty. You were a queen not only to me, but to everyone you came into contact with. Always regal, always distinguished, always impeccably dressed. I've lived out of town for so many years. How can I ask Mechila for not being at your side? Only now I wish I could have spent more time with you. During those years, when I lived in New York, my mother was here. I need to thank my son, Yoni, and the family, and his family, for their incredible dedication to my mother. Yoni, your efforts were truly priceless. You took care of the house, the bills, anything that had to be done, you took care of. Even during COVID, my mother was isolated, wasn't getting many visits. You brought the children, you stayed outside, she looked at you through the window. She cherished the acumen of that. I thanks to my wife, Bela, for treating my mother like your mother, as if she was your mother, never missing an opportunity to call, to chat. Every single time we came to LA to visit my parents, she would come with something from my mother, without fail. It was an incredible relationship that you will always see between a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. It was just so special. And to my boys, Donnie and Dave, always showed the utmost respect. They revered your mom. They revered my mother totally. To Esther, David, Michael, Jenny, and the families, the children, your constant visits every Sunday, over and over, always going over there, cheering her up, keeping her going. You guys were so instrumental in keeping her alive and making life worthwhile for her at those times. I'm going to end off by describing my last Shabbos with my mother, which was last Shabbos. Just to say, this past Thursday when I spoke to my mother, I told her, "Mom, I'm coming for Shabbos." And she said to me, and this was the last thing she really said to me, "I'll see you tomorrow for Shabbos." Well, she wasn't there for Shabbos, but the previous Shabbos, I was there. I arrived on Friday. My mother was asking, "Is the table ready? Is the challah ready? Is the challah knife ready? Is the candles ready?" Even in her condition, always worrying about these things. I would sit down with you on a Friday night. You were always telling me, "Don't go to shul on Friday night. It might be dangerous outside." And I listened to you. I would stay back these Friday nights, last Friday night. I stayed home with you. I davened Kabbalah Shanos with you. I sang with you. I did the whole davening with you. And before that, I'll never forget when you lit the candles. Candles were set up for you. You really couldn't see very much at that time. But you knew you had to light candles. There was no, whether you saw them or not, you had the match. You were guided to the candles. You lit the candles. The bracha, Shek Shadu Mitzvah Shabbos, Yibana Lahadlik Ner Shal Shabbos. I was zolshet to hear it. That last bracha for you last Friday night. will stay with me forever. I know that this entire community thanks you for laying the foundation for our community, for building Yiddishkeit so that we can all thrive. May you rest at Gan Eden, be a Melissa's Yeshur for our entire family.
Sioni Weiss.
But we all knew this day would come. But after a while, seeing how much strength and persistence and perseverance she always had, we started having our doubts. We just celebrated my grandmother's, Ma's, 100th birthday. We're so fortunate to have had so many great years with her and to spend quality time together and to form such wonderful memories. Have a good Shabbos, Ma, were my last words to her. I called her on the Amazon Alexa, which she took to like she was a natural, with a couple of my kids on Thursday evening. We had a wonderful conversation, led by my nearly 2-year-old Yosef, who grabbed the phone and ran around the house shouting, "Ma, Ma," with Ma just beaming with happiness and pride and responding to him. I then took the phone and I told her that we all loved her and that it was Friday and it was Thursday, tomorrow was Shabbos, and she should have a good Shabbos. That Shabbos she ultimately would not be on this earth, but she was alert and with it up until the final moment, and we're very, very grateful for that. My relationship with Ma spanned 2 distinct phases. The first phase was during my childhood. My earliest memories of Ma, as we called her, were visiting Los Angeles as a kid for every Sukkot and Pesach and other occasions. We had a wonderful time with Ma and with our Zadie Laser during those Yom Tovim and during other school vacations. My grandparents were a great team, spending time together, working downtown together, and supporting Jewish institutions together, which, by the way, was something she did up until her last years, just supporting various Mosdos, by writing checks, by visiting as we were, and just supporting them in any way she could. Although we were 3,000 miles away, we were closer than those miles would suggest, as even though those were the days before FaceTime, we kept in close contact during the periods between visits, via frequent phone calls and home videos that my father would take of us and then mail to my grandparents. As I grew up, we continued to stay close despite the distance. When I started going to sleepaway camp, I would always send letters to Ma in Los Angeles. Every letter would be returned with a letter from Ma with a $10 bill, which, by the way, is a tradition that she kept up when my daughter Liba went to sleepaway camp. And she would write letters to Ma, and Ma would send back a letter, except by the time Liba was in camp, the dollar bills were $20 bills. After our Zadie Laser passed away, we started seeing Ma a little bit more frequently, taking advantage of opportunities to go to Los Angeles for more quicker and more frequent trips, and welcoming Ma to our home in New Rochelle for more Yom Tovim, graduations, and other special occasions. Then the relationships shifted to the next phase. When I was 20 years old, I married my wife, Tali, and Ma took center stage in the planning as the wedding was here in Los Angeles. Ma hosted a beautiful offer for me, the Shabbos before the wedding. But what made her even happier was that I enrolled at UCLA Law School and moved to Los Angeles August of 2008. Ma was 85 years old. If she would have told me I would have had 5 good years after that, I would have been happy. She would have told me 10 good years. Great. I never would have imagined it would be 14 years of living near her, and then I would see and spend meaningful time with her, and she would spend time with 4 or 5 children. It was a really symbiotic relationship. We took care of her, and she took care of us. We arrived here August 12, 2008. Our first stop was Ma's house from the airport, the 116 North Hudson. We lived there for the balance of August while I started law school, and we looked for an apartment. Living with her was exactly as I would have expected. She was happy when we were home with her, and she made us feel very guilty when we didn't come home with her. And we started what became a years-long tradition, which was going out to eat with Ma every single Thursday night during my law school years. In June 2009, Liba, our oldest, was born. It became a love affair between Ma and Liba. Liba joined our weekly dinners and became a fan favorite at Elite Cuisine. And by the way, despite the restaurant being a mere 2 minutes from her house, she never ever approved of how I drove there. I always made some turn before or after she wanted me to, and she would just look and say, "That's not how they go," with a look of disappointment. We continued to spend a lot of time at her house, and we have wonderful memories of Ma getting down on the floor and playing with her great-granddaughter. Ma joined us for Shabbos at my in-laws' house where Liba was born and his name. She joined us at Liba's birthday parties, and we go out for birthdays, Mother's Days, Father's Days, and great quality time of moving to Ma's house for long weekends whenever my parents would come into town. After I graduated law school and started working, it made Thursday dinners difficult, so we shifted the tradition to Sundays. Liba, Tali, and I drove over every Sunday, and we'd go out to eat with her. In 2012, we had another child, a boy, and named him Eliezer Avraham, after Erzadi Laser. I remember watching Ma at the bris, hearing the name and seeing tears of combined sadness and happiness. Avi, as we called him, joined our crew, and Ma just delighted in playing with him, feeding him, and spending time with him. And all throughout this time, Ma took care of us. She called me constantly from grocery stores, asking what she could buy us, what we needed. In our late 80s. And even when I tell her we didn't need anything, it wouldn't stop her. She'd still buy us things. And when I'd show up on Sundays, she'd show us the strawberries, the blueberries, whatever it was that she bought for us, because she thought we could use it. She would buy toys for the kids whenever she found something she thought they would like. She always had ice cream, chocolates, and candies available. The kids knew that and loved seeing what new goodies she had. She would never let us leave without offering in another dessert. When I would tell Ma they didn't need it, she would respond, "Why not?" And I had no good answer. And she was always concerned about us. If I ever told her I had a cold or was feeling a bit under the weather, she would follow up for days asking how I was feeling. And even she once called her doctor to call me to check up on me. It's just a mild head cold was never a good excuse. She was always stubborn in a good way. When she was convinced of something, there was nothing you could do to that. 2015 brought with it two simchas to us, a new baby, Benji, and Avi's upshare. We're so lucky to have Ma join us at the house for the upshare. And Benji, in time, my son, became the boy would call her, shined upon him. He could just play games with her for hours and hours, and ended up spending many Shabbos with my parents when they would come to LA to visit together with Ma. It was also around this time that Ma started slowing down just a bit. Our Sunday night dinners going out turned into dinners eating in, when it became too much for her to go out every Sunday night. We'd come over each Sunday, either for lunch or for dinner, and bring food with us. We'd spend lots of time hanging around the house, either swimming in the summer or playing games with Ma in the winter. My kids loved playing games with her. She could play for hours and so could they. The years went by, I'd spend more and more time with Ma, even aside from the Sunday visits. I'd go over there on some nights during the week, and I'd call my mother on the drive home to just recap how Ma was doing. We'd go through her mail, talk about the simcha invitations she received, the tzedakah requests she received. I would check the house, we would chat about everything. Her favorite being talking about old times. Any question about life back in Hungary with men with an energetic response, full of life, color, and details about her life back in Hungary. Her parents, her relatives, her friends. Over time, that became our go-to conversation. She would talk about her schooling, the religious life in Hungary, her talent, what they did in her free time. Every now and then I would try to see if she was still paying attention. I would slip in something like, "Ma, what kind of iPad did you have in Hungary?" And she would erupt into laughter each time. She loved talking about her past. And she'd continue just making me feel guilty whenever she was able. Whenever I couldn't get there on Sunday, the infrequent Sundays, she'd always, no matter how good my excuse, make me feel bad about it. I would say, "Ma, we can't get here today. We're in New York." She'd respond, "Okay, whatever you need to do, you have to do." Fast forward to 2020, COVID hit. We briefly paused our weekly visits, very briefly, but then quickly devised a workaround. Instead of visiting her indoors, we'd spend time outside her backyard, either swimming or sitting around the table having pizza and french fries. Ma would sit every time by the hallway by the window looking outside. We would take COVID selfies. We would have us outside and Ma inside in the same picture. Then came 2021, and Baruch Hashem, we had our fourth child, Yosef, and Ma was just overjoyed. We'd bring him to Ma's house constantly, and Ma was over the moon with him. Even at her weekend state, she'd play with him and talk to him, hold him, and just delight in his every action. It was also around that time, I remember when Ma took a fall one Friday afternoon, always Friday afternoons. And she was brought to Cedars, and thank God she was okay with no injuries. I'll always remember in a nice time we had together. Just me and Ma for hours and hours, Friday night in the hospital, making kiddush and hamotzi with a grape juice and challah, the bigger Volden brought us. and just chatting it all night. Finally, in 2020, we made the decision to leave Los Angeles and move back to New York. And as anyone knows who knows me, the most difficult part of that was leaving Ma. I knew I'd miss the constant visits, the conversations, the love. I knew she would miss having me, Tali, and our kids spend time with her so often, and I worried that how she'd be cared for when she had health problems. We left in June 2022. We never really did tell Ma that we were leaving. First we said we were going for the summer, and then we said we were staying for the Yom Tovim. Then we were saying I was spending more time there for work. She wasn't fooled. She did. We saw her for the last time last month when we visited Ma in mid-January. She was ill in a week, but we gathered around her bed to speak with her, cognizant that it could well be a last time. The amazing moment then was when we were leaving, and our baby Yosef, who could not have remembered her from back in June, waved and said, "Bye, Ma," and till this day I'll never know how he knew who it was. But her eyes lit up, and that's how it was. We spent time with her constantly. Her house was my second home for all these years. We admired and learned from her strength, her devotion, her persistence, her perseverance, her love, and just the regal nature with which she always carried herself like a real queen. She was proud of us, but we were also so proud to be her grandchildren. Growing up, never did I think I'd have all these years with Ma. It was a tremendous privilege for me and Tali and the kids. Everyone I knew how close we were. My friends, relatives, my colleagues at my law firm, they knew, because every Monday when they'd come into work and they'd ask how my weekend was, I would say it was great. We had sports games for the kids, and we visited my grandmother. Every Monday would say that. People would always comment to me how nice it must have been for Ma to have us living near her. And the truth is, there's a saying that more than the Jews have kept Shabbos, Shabbos has kept the Jewish people. And that's true with Ma as well. It may have looked from the outside like she was the lucky one to have us nearby, and it was her who was benefited. And that may well be true, but just as much or more than we benefited, than she benefited, we benefited from her. To have this close relationship, this linked out past, this icon for my kids to look up to form a close bond with and to remember. We learned so much from Ma, and I like to think that my kids learned a lot by how much time we spent with her. If it sounds like we spent a lot of time together, that's because we did. It was wonderful for me. It was also something I learned from both of my parents, who for years, decades really, have selflessly given of themselves to take care of their parents. That includes many years ago, when we were young, my father making sure we always called, we always kept in touch, my father flying back and forth to LA every Shabbos for months before my Zadie Laser passed away in 1998. And now my father, and often my mother too, flying back and forth to LA every Shabbos these last couple months. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for making our home one in which our past and our parents and grandparents are of paramount importance, where we cherish every moment with them. I hope my children have seen this and learned from you as well. I also want to thank my wife, Tali. I was Ma's grandchild. Spending time with her was out of question. But Tali made this her primary business too, and she didn't have to do it nearly to the extent she did. I was amazed by how she treated Ma as if Ma was her little grandmother. She put up with 14 years of visiting Ma every Sunday and largely running her lives around visiting Ma. She did it not because she had to, but because she had real love and respect for her. Holly, I'll always be grateful for how much love and care you had for her. I know spending every Sunday there didn't make for the most exciting Sundays, but you had a tremendous solace for how happy you made her all these years. Ma, thank you for everything you did for our family. Thank you for the love, the care, the conversations, and always being there for us. Living close to you is one of the greatest blessings in my life. It's a period I always look back fondly on and remember you. I'm so sorry you left. I know it hurt you more than you let on. Not a day has gone by since we left. I haven't been paid by it. I hope you forgive me. I love you.
Final remarks by Donnie Weiss, followed by the Helmuller Rock.
My grandmother, as we called her, was somebody I was lucky to have an amazing relationship with, somebody I learned so much from. She was a role model to us all in everything she did her entire life. Ma was somebody who was unwavering in her values including kindness, warmth, Yiddishkeit, and always being there for her friends and family any way she could. Growing up, we spent weekends at Lincoln Camp, coming to LA to visit and spend as much time as we could with Ma and being here, whether it was Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, July 4th weekend, summers, and many more. Our conversations at our house were always revolved around what weekend worked for everybody to go and try and make it possible to go as soon as possible. We would always arrive in the house in the late hours of the night from the airport, and Ma would always be up waiting for us, no matter the time. A full spread of food, fresh fruit and drinks were always waiting for us, even after the times our flights were delayed many hours. She always made sure to ask us what our favorite foods were, have them ready for us, middle of the night of our arrival, to spoil us to no end. Ma always had a regal appearance to her, and always looked like she was ready at moment's notice for the next gala event. But to Ma, parties and small talk were not her interest. Every single day was a gala event for her of simply taking care of those close to her, including her grandkids, family, and friends, and making sure everyone had what they needed. Her consistently radiant appearance was a reflection of her zest for life and family gatherings. Her original business in LA was with watches and clocks, and time was something that she valued greatly and knew how to use, never something to be wasted. During my college years, I needed to take some summer courses, and I decided to come to LA to live with Ma for the summer and take classes here. Most college kids these days may not imagine their college summers spent with their grandmothers in her house. But for me, because it was Ma, I knew it was a no-brainer, and I had no other choice. Ma was more than happy to have me, and she even trusted me to drive the Cadillac up to Northridge every day for school, on condition that I got the weekly car washes on schedule, because a clean car and organized house were always of utmost importance to her. She would prepare a unique dinner for me every night, even on nights that she hosted her weekly card game with her friends. I got a list of very specific errands every week to run with the car when I was here for the summer. Everything from the right place to buy fruits, not the grocery store, the right place to buy bread, also which I learned, not the grocery store, and of course the Shabbos essentials. Ma was always very specific and deliberate and always having the best, especially when it came to Shabbos. Shabbos was one of the most important things to Ma. It wouldn't be Shabbos without her gefilte fish, chicken soup, and of course shop liver, all freshly made in the kitchen with the help of Gabby, of course. Ma was always taking the time to make things homemade versus just buying it in the store. She showed us the value of hard work and not always choosing the easy and quick results. Everything from hand-squeezed oranges from the orange trees in the backyard, the homemade shop liver, or homemade sponge cake, always taking the center place on the kitchen table. A meal was not complete without dessert, as you heard before. I remember one time she took me and a few friends out for dinner to Shiloh's, of course, her favorite restaurant, and when my friend declined dessert after the large meal, she insisted he take one home to go in to go back. Of course, to which she had no choice but to oblige to agree to take the chocolate volcano home. So too was the way she led her life. She would not just be satisfied with a light appetizer or main or dessert. Her life, as she made it, was truly a 5-course meal of success and fulfillment. Ma was an incredible part of all of our lives, and we will miss her every day. I could not have asked for a better role model who demonstrated how to live life to the fullest every day, in spite of the adversity she faced as a teenager going through the Holocaust. We should all strive to be as strong as her. We love you, Ma. Thank you.
Al you going shoot with the lawyer in his yard for a key of Masvidul afflictions. Lydia Marion Bass Brother Midian Bass is stratified crucial and full Lord alone. Marvelous rolling roar, shall not the vote to the go, but has got us wish more so. Began either at the time in Ucho, so the dream, but I am in the after. We say better, we say second more, for the Lord, be it the Lord, the Mitzvah Chaim, earthly shmo, so I didn't know, so the son of well, I'll mishkivo and show loving when I'm out on everything that.
Will take place in Harmagufas on Monday afternoon. We're going to be Malavad Ar, Point City, now came to the Comfort Alley.